Welcome to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. This story brings you local experts on topics from national, state, local, and local. And with me today, I have Charles Lipson here. He is Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Chicago. His columns, Real Clear Politics, Spectator, World, Newsweek, The Wall Street Journal, and journals are available for free at charleslipson.com. So welcome, Charles, to my program. And again, when I asked you to come on this podcast, I specifically wanted to talk about the Ukrainian situation because you've written a lot about that. And here's what I find interesting. On May 5th, you wrote, Ukraine is going to win. America's heavy weapons will make the difference against the Russians. Then on May 16th, you wrote, how long can Russia stay in this fight? And well, then today, what do we have? We have the Wall Street Journal headline saying Ukraine will fight until all Russian forces are expelled, military intelligence chief says. So could you just open our program here? Because I think people want to hear from an expert, and your expertise is international relations, by the way, at the University of Chicago. Tell us why these headlines that you wrote, how you seem very, very confident that not only is Ukraine going to win, but that I suppose you agree with the Wall Street Journal headline that Russian forces will be expelled.
Well, they just follow me, step by step. The intelligence services in the Wall Street Journal. If the New York Times did, they would be a far better paper. It seems to me that whenever I think of what Putin has done, I think of Wile E. Coyote, strategic genius. I mean, everything he wanted to accomplish has turned out exactly the opposite. He's unified a sluggish NATO alliance. He's added 2 new members, Turkey's objections to Finland and Sweden notwithstanding. Those will eventually be overcome. But it's also worth noting that Finland shares over 800 miles of border with Russia, and that some of that border very close to St. Petersburg, which poses a real strategic challenge for any government in Russia. That is, they can just concentrate down on the sort of Ukraine-Polish area. They've got to also think about what's happening up north. So that's a big problem. I also wrote earlier that the people who thought, oh, gee, this is going to really help China had it all wrong. That the problem China faces is that it really has only one important ally in addition to North Korea, and that's Russia. And the weaker Russia is, the worse it is for China. And the fact that Russia can't basically pin down all U.S. forces in Europe is going to be a big problem. Now, the fact that Russia is a threat will pin down some resources, but I see us transferring more and more resources to China, plus the fact that they now have to really wonder about the nature of any invasion of Taiwan. I think that going back to Ukraine, I think the problem is kind of reminds me of what happened with the kamikaze pilots that Japan had in World War II, right? Every time they smashed into a U.S. ship or something, they lost a pilot that they couldn't replace, and they lost a plane that they couldn't replace. Russia is almost out of smart weapons. Ukraine, which is far outnumbered, nevertheless has this vast, just a cornucopia of advanced weapons that are coming in from the West, and these are far better weapons. And of course, our intelligence is far better, and their army is not only far more motivated, the Ukrainian army, but it has a better strategic sense of what it's doing. And that is, Russia's army, like its economy, is all top down, right? And if things are screwed up at the front, you have to send a general or a colonel to the front to figure out what's going on, and that's why they get killed. Whereas in the American army, and the same is true in other NATO armies, and the Ukrainian army, though it's not in NATO, operates on NATO principles. It has sergeants, it has lieutenants, and those people are told what the aim is in a particular battle, and then if things get complicated, they can make their own choice about what to do as long as they're aiming for what is the strategic outcome, and that they've been told from the top. They're not told how to do it. They're told what the goal is.
Well,
I
and
think that's a better. You've done a lot of public policy. I think that's a better decentralized way of doing a lot of public policy.
Well, that's exactly why we spend so much money and effort training our younger leaders in the military, whether it's that that corporal, which is the first sort of leadership position that you would find in the U.S. Army. From an enlisted point of view, to your second lieutenants. I mean, these people, we spend a lot of time training our younger leaders to take control when they need to. And
do you have examples from your own experience?
Well, certainly. I mean, I was never in a combat situation, so I only have training examples. But there's no way that you when your force gets divided. For example, I remember we were doing some sort of a nuclear, biological, and chemical exercise, and literally you have your platoon sergeant who may be doing one part of the mission, maybe working on supplies and making sure the supplies go well. A lot of times you would have to rely on a squad leader to actually go ahead and advance towards the object, and you are hanging back as a lieutenant. You're not typically leading. You're not the point person. In that wedge formation, you're relying on a really good trained squad leader to assess the situation going forward, and that's how we train. That's how, and that's how we train with our NATO allies. That is definitely true. I did spend time in the Army in West Germany, and that's how we were trained as well. So, and in our convoys, all those leaders. I was a transportation officer. They have to learn from the very beginning how to advance if they need to. And so that we're used to that. Now, I will say this. I was reading in another publication that essentially it looks like Putin has lost at least 42 of his colonels and apparently 9 or 10 generals at this point.
Yeah, they're depleted, and Reuters and others have reported that Russian forces are forced on by a third. Now, big country, and people might ask, why can't they recruit their people? And there are two answers to that. The most important is you were talking all the training you do. You want to see things the first time in combat, and you just pick people off the street. They might be a competent person. You can't just throw them into the front and they will be competent. They'll just be cancer fodder. But the second reason is has not been mentioned very much. Most of the people who've been sent to the war and been recruited have not come from St. Petersburg and Moscow. There's a political reason for that, right? They want people from these marginal areas. It's easier to recruit them because they're impoverished and looking for a way to earn a little money. But it's also the case that if you lose 1,000 of them, it's different from losing 1,000 people in Moscow or St. Petersburg. There you could get political pushback. But it can't be a good thing for Russian leadership around Putin to see what's going on. And the more he tries to purge people who are potential threats to him, the more next guy in line thinks, if I don't act today, it happens tomorrow.
Well, a couple cuts on that. First, my understanding from my reading is that the Russian force overall, their army, so to speak, is about 900,000 in strength. Those that were sort of towards the Ukrainian front into the is about 200,000. Now, I don't know. They're saying one-third is ground forces have been taken out of the action, wounded, killed. Well, honestly, if that third of 200,000, you're talking You're talking like, like 60,000 troops out of action. That's an enormous amount. When you think, you think in the Vietnam War, the US over a 10-year period lost 50,000. So
numbers we don't know for sure for the numbers. We don't know that for the numbers of cases of A, but it looks like they could as 20,000 on the Russian side.
That's a huge number. Is my point? Weeks. That's enormous. I don't know. You. Oh, that doesn't have an effect on you in your homeland.
Yeah, and it has an effect on morale on the front. I mean, because I don't know if you're not as old as I am, but I'm reading Catching 22. And did you ever reach 22?
I did not, but I will put that on my list.
Okay. Catch 22, which is really funny. Osarian, one of the characters, and it's set in World War II. And he, the catch, by the way, whichever uses the term. Do you know what it comes from?
No, I don't know.
It comes from the fact there's only one way you can get out of fighting, and if you're declared mentally incompetent. But you can't be declared mentally incompetent unless you fill out a form that says you are. But if you're capable of filling out that form, you're not mentally incompetent. And so it's a circular thing. I think TV show MASH used something kind of
okay.
that in any event, Yossarian always said that it was the Japanese who were trying to kill him. It was his commander and who was sending up in the air on a fight. That guy who was really kill him because he was out into peril. And I think more and more Russians soldiers think the guy who's trying to kill me is not Ukrainian over there. It's my commander. So there was a problem in the Vietnam War that that U.S. commanders began their first they were disobeyed, and then people would kill them, and that's got to be a problem. The Russians now have basically stopped offensive operation except in two small areas. Mm-hmm. Those could be important. Don't get me wrong. They could encircle some Ukrainian forces if these Ukrainian forces don't pull back from one particular region near the Don. But frankly, when you compare that one minor that minor thing to what the Russians originally hoped to do, it's apples and oranges.
Well, how do you write that that Ukraine is to win? Talk a little bit more about that deadline that you wrote. How soon do you think it'll happen? Do you think what will be the decision point that makes Russia? And by the way, when you say when Ukraine's going to win, do you mean that they're going to push them out of Ukrainian territory?
Question, because that's the first question. We don't know what winning exactly means. But for the Ukrainians, it means pushing them completely out of the Donbass region. I don't know. They feel like they can really take Crimea at this point. I think that they are ceded to the Russians. I think the Russians have done has been so awful
Mm-hmm.
in terms of war crimes and assaults, all the rest, that I think it's very difficult for any Ukrainian leader to make a bargain with it gives up any territory at all. And if they leave any territory with the Russians, they have to be worried the Russians will constitute attack again. And of course, their goal is to destabilize the country. So I think that the Ukrainians will keep fighting as long as they have the equipment. But here's the second point.
Okay.
It's possible that the United States and the weaker or more compromising NATO nations led by Germany and France will try to choke off the supply of new weapons to Ukraine. And of course, there's resistance in the United States because it's expensive to send those weapons. But my sense is that the Ukrainians will continue to fight as light as they have the resources.
why would NATO countries choke off weapons that the Ukrainians need to defend themselves?
Because they think that the only way to end this war is a compromise
Okay.
bargain
Yes.
solution, and they so. And this is not unreasonable. They wonder what will happen if Putin is painted into a corner. His only choice between loss, which would probably mean he would be booted out of office and might be killed, or using a weapon of mass destruction. So they're worried about that. This is typical German and French politics for a
Absolutely.
long time. It's
Appeasement.
not as if this is new.
No, this is they have a history of appeasement, and we know that. So I'm not surprised.
And the British stronger than the Americans in terms in their diplomatic support. We've supplied by the most weapons. But it's important to understand that the United States goals in Ukraine have changed, right? Our initial expectation was that the Ukraine would lose, and the whole year of Russian building up on the border, Biden not only conceded the pipeline, Nord Stream pipeline, we didn't do much to build up deterrence. It was just a catastrophic failure.
Total failure. And then the generals, class, general class essentially, basically say it's all going to be over in 8 days.
Right. And because they thought they had.
How did we have? Like I said, we have the best trains. I think in the world. I mean, my son's a pilot. His training is top notch, right? You know, you got to land on an aircraft carrier. You want you to be top notch. Now, where's the general class with all of the skill sets they have of the history lessons they're taught? You know, you go to college if you want to that level. You have masters and PhD in many cases, and they completely got wrong.
And the CIA got it wrong. The CIA, the whole estimation of Russian military power was badly off. And
how? Why? How and why?
Well, if America had competent political structure, you would have afterwards would be people like Gates and other kind of very serious, very high-level people who are not partisan would go back, look the mistakes. Let me say something about the fact that first we did apply Ukraine with the military resources needed to deter a Russian invasion. Then as it became, although we all had knowledge increasing that Putin was building over 100,000 forced on the border, so we really should anticipate an invasion or a high probability of one, and put in forces there. But once we knew the invasion was going to happen, we didn't put resources in then because we thought it would be an Afghan situation. Resources we put in be captured by Russians because they would take Kiev in 3 or 4 days, and then all they would capture the whole country. They would decapitate the regime, install puppet, and they would capture any military forces that were there. This brings another point. One of the things that the Russians have done is they in effect created or reinforced Ukrainian national identity. Created is the wrong word. Reinforced and pervasive, including in the Donbass, and that means that. No matter what, there's no possibility that the Russian can rule that country. They certainly can't rule any territory within it without leaving their own troops there to enforce their rule at the barrel of a gun. So this is a mistake on every level, and if you're any leader around, you have to be wondering, how do we get out of this mess, which has just been disastrous.
Well, they're going to be suffering. Obviously, I heard they are actually thinking of reversing to allow the Russian make debt payments on their government, essentially throwing them to default. ties up their ability to take additional loans that they need to reestablish or reconstitute their military, or have borrowings for any purposes, economic. What a degree are we still to enforce things like that? I also heard that they're really utilizing washing machines to microchip to help run sophisticated weapons, because
well, that's the reason their helicopters keep skiing around their own wind cycle. No, yeah.
Is not. I mean, what does mean? What I mean. So I mean, to what degree? I mean, how long can they hold out? And by the way, is Putin sick? Is he sick? I mean, people speculating. The guy's got
sure looks like it.
Cancer.
The problem being sick. There are two big problems. One is that the medications that he takes, some of them make them more paranoid, or not that he needs additional help. But the other thing is, when you're sick, or when you're very old, and you're an agitator, people begin to think of succession and how they're going to fit into that, and it makes the leader more vulnerable. And there's just no place Putin can go. Maybe Beijing or something. If he wanted to get out of the country. But there's a problem with whoever succeeds. Big problems. First of all, none of these corporations are going back into Russia. It's just too dangerous, politically too volatile. But the other is, let's learn a little from history. It happened at the end of World War I in Germany. People in Germany were told over and over again, we're winning. Oops, lost. And they were not. It's not as if the foreign army marched into Berlin. It's not the people who are subject to religious propaganda understood why they were lost. Just looked at the new leaders who came in had betrayed the Germans who were winning. That was dab in the back, the thesis that led to the compounded the problems of anti-Semitism, so forth. Who's this in the back. But if you've got a successor to Putin who wants to get out of this war, and all publicity, and we're winning, we're going to get rid of the Nazis there. They're going to have a problem creating a legitimate successor government in Russia because of how they conducted this war. So it's hard. The other thing is in government down, which could happen. This army could be fake, right? French army in 1916, I think it was, or 17, refused to fight.
Well, there's already reports out that Russians are literally taking their own equipment, blowing it up in place, and tanks and everything that they don't fight.
Right. This is exactly right. Exactly. When that becomes that pervasive, you see an army breaks down. It's very difficult to predict that, right? It's not as if it's like a willow that bends and bends and bends, and at some point it breaks. It's like pressure on a glass tabletop. It's just pressure, and then all of a sudden, it just completely shatters. And it's hard to know what the shatter point of that is. But I think that what you're seeing now on the battlefield is essentially, it looks like stalemate. But I think what you're seeing is actually tilted in favor of the Ukrainian. New equipment is coming in that has a far reach and is more lethal, is more precise. And the next thing you will see, I think, is some assaults by Ukrainians once they are ready, and the Russians have stopped all forward movement except one little area, Donbass, are just defensive mode.
Well, we'll turn to talk about the $40 billion Ukrainian aid package just passed. Because it's kind of interesting. So $40 billion into context. I mean, that's about prior to the Biden administration. That's about what we spent every year on the federal program. So it's a significant amount of money. It's not change by any means. It's a lot of money. Then reading also from the United States has rushed 3.3 billion armaments to Ukraine since Russia invaded on February 24th, including howitzers, aircraft Stinger systems, anti-javelin missiles, and armed drones, blah 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 blah. The legislation includes more than $4 billion in international disaster assistance to respond to humanitarian needs in Ukraine and other countries. Includes $350 million in migration and refugee assistance. Okay, let's see. Else. $9 billion for an economic fund for Ukraine and other countries affected by the conflict, including programs to combat human trafficking, and it can be used to respond to food insecurity.
Food insecurity is a very important thing. We should come back on that.
Okay. The funds may be used to provide direct financial support to the government of Ukraine to build. According to a bill, although all transfers would be subject to a memorandum of understanding. Let's see. The Network Against Food Crisis is set up by United Nations. The European Union said this month the Russian invasion of both countries, major food producers, and this poses this serious risk to global food security. So I understand that. But this includes those countries like Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Haiti, Somalia, South. So essentially, what I'm saying is like $40 isn't just going to Ukraine, and it's not, and it's going for weapons. It's going for a full host of other stuff, and in fact, probably a large percentage of it is for other stuff other than just munition. Well, then on top of the top 400 billion, 40 billion. What did Biden say? He had another 100 million just for weaponry.
Yeah, I think that was for Hunter Biden. Look, when you have a big bill passed like this, it's like Nancy Pelosi once. We have to pass it, find out what's in and you're going to have some Christmas tree problems, where they just ornaments on the branches. I don't think it's wrong that we begin to send economic aid to Ukraine. They're in a complete meltdown because of what the weapons has done. I think the main here is and I do think there's a big problem when you're sending so much money to a country once had problems of corruption on the playing field level. You need to have more oversight. I don't think Rand was wrong about that at all. But I say that the reason that there's been an expansion of our aims and our fund is that this battle that if Ukraine were to lose would be extremely expensive in every sense of the word for the West. Russia would be empowered. Now it wouldn't just stop there. We would spend a lot of weapons, a lot of money on weapons to deter in the Baltic region, but also around Poland and around Romania and elsewhere. So I think that we feel this field where the battle is joined, and we need to at the very least stop Russia and ideally roll back, subject to concerns about what could happen in terms of weapons of mass destruction. I want to say something about food.
Talk about food.
Because Ukraine is a major grain producer, right? And I don't know the story about whether their farmers are able to plant or whether all their tractors are tires up to away Russian tanks. But they export all that grain through Odessa, which is on the Black Sea. And Russia's not declared war, has done something you can only do in war, which is blockaded the port of Odessa. Now it was blockading it close in, but ships, we all know, got taken out. Some of it, so they further out beyond missile range. They are preventing any trade in or out or through Ukraine's port. We could send U.S. naval vessels in to escort or trade vessels. That poses a risk that a no-fly zone would. That they could fire at our vessel. That would be suicidal, but it would put us into war. So I think that the big issue in the Biden administration now, and you can be confident they'll make decisions, would be should we longer range anti-ship missiles into Ukrainians so they could in effect enforce all the Russian navals that are doing the blockade back into port in Crimea, at Sevastopol, and elsewhere, and that would open up that port for trade. I suspect this will do that because otherwise there's a total food shortage. This already had any effect in Sri Lanka. There's a total breakdown. There's no food there, and there's been a breakdown. And there was a big ship with stolen Ukrainian that the Russians just sent, and the Egyptians refused to accept. So this is this big issue. I don't really know fully how it plays, but I do think we have to break that blockade around Odessa.
That's. But I think that your question is farmers able to get in and plant? Are there fertilizer production facilities still operational as well? And is there energy, which is the resource, all of that to actually plant and produce other goods? Is that still up to speed? Do they have the energy?
Boy, I just hope they don't have the Biden administration's energy planners dealing with. I've never seen an administration shoot itself in the foot as many times as relentlessly this administration on policy after policy, beginning with energy on day one.
What don't they understand about that? I mean, you sit here in Illinois, we know the same thing coming. The Pritzker administration at the state level, are just hamstring our energy, our resources. I mean, you've got Ameren supplies to the southern parts of the state. And they've announced, headline, hey, expect rolling blackouts this summer, and energy spikes in cases. So
people are not happy. I don't know much about noise energy inland, but I can tell you there is the real problem is that the Biden administration has done everything it can in terms of regulations and rules and so forth to cut off U.S. energy introduction and distribution, and that is a problem not only in the United States but affects global energy prices.
Well, the same thing in Illinois. I mean, there's actual officials that actually said the Clean Energy Act that the Pritzker administration passed last fall directly that as part of the problem in us having insecurity in the state of Illinois. So it is a regulatory issue. They've war on fossil fuels, which by the way, is some of this fuel. When you look at the entire life stream of production from start from finish, whether it's a solar panel in a wind mill or a coal plant or a natural gas plant. Fossil fuels still do a decent job of the biggest for the biggest value,
especially natural gas. Yes.
Especially natural gas. So I mean, though it's an issue. I think that I don't know long term what's happen with NATO countries and their energy. I assume they're still getting supply from Russia. Natural gas.
Well, they're moving to cut it off. And that's hard to do to some countries that are heavily dependent, and but they are moving to cut it off at the end of the year. But this is how Russia is funding its war is these energy sales, and the idea that Biden administration floated this week that they replace the energy production that actually voluntarily shut down in the United States with heavy oil from Venezuela, ruled by just the worst kind of regime. It's lunacy. How can they possibly think this is a coherent policy, and they actually thinking the alternative to that would get it from Iran. I mean, gee, did these guys graduate?
What do you think politically? Do you get that average voter in America understands what's going on?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
If you look at right track, I mean, the number of people who think that the country's on the right and the rack, they're listed by name. They're down below percentage numbers, and most of them relatives of the Biden administration. I mean, it's just people know that those are off track. But I must say that there's a lot of satisfaction with Trump administration, especially Trump did after the election.
Sure.
And so if you look, I mean, he's a 100-pound gorilla in the Republican Party. But if you look at the number, the percentage, and even the Republican vote is going to Trump-backed candidates, it's about a third. It's not a majority of the party. You can't win general elections without that third. Can't alienate them. But there's a real problem. America, it's if Americans are saying we really like. We will say we were better 2 years ago than we are now.
Absolutely,
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
And that would be the best bet to run. Really. Are you better off now than you were 2 years ago? And who could possibly say they are? But there's a lot of dissatisfaction with going back to a very erratic and angry and sort of narcissistic way of governing ourselves. And so I think but the question is anybody really in a position to take Trump as the president?
Okay, so let's go there. We'll close out because your time is precious here. I do want to go there. You did. And you had said prior to going, on this Zoom call, you talked about the fact that the next article you planning for Spectator, and it's just great. You can catch Charles Lipson, charleslipson.com. You can read all of his comments for free. I frequently go to Spectator World, and then I'm cut on because I've already read my free article. I'll use yours instead, but he writes terrific stuff, and you stuff at the next one you're going to write. You're going to assessment style, and so you talk about an angry, narcissistic system of administration in Trump, but some of that is well founded.
Oh yeah,
he was absolutely persecuted and
the old joke. Even though it's have enemies. Yeah. Well, no, there's absolutely no question. There's no question. But okay. Let me do the suspect for a second.
Everybody was against him. Had deep state against him.
Yeah. There's no about that.
Question.
But it's different from saying that the election of let's go to the last election. That election was quote rigged in the sense that all the major media were against him, social media and articles that could have affected the outcome, including was about Biden, were allowed to be circulated, even though they had been accurately reported by the New York Post, right? And even, this is just a scandal. That's different. Saying that the vote count was off. It may be off a little bit. Trump just denied he lost the election. That's very troubling for a democracy. It was very troubling when Stacey Abrams said she'd lose in Georgia. And by the way, current White House press secretary agreed with that.
Yeah.
So she was an election denier in Georgia. But if you go back 2016 election, Sussman was essentially the number 2 election lawyer in the main ad law firm for Hillary Clinton campaign. So right at the center of things. He's being tried for a relatively minor crime, but it is a felony to lie to the FBI. And the reason it's important is you're seeing Jeanne Durham put a lot of the evidence of what's sometimes called a joint venture, sometimes some criminal conspiracy to use federal government agencies to undermine Trump's candidacy based on fraudulent information and fraudulent warrant and all the rest to spy on the Trump campaign. But it wasn't just that they were spying on them. The point of spying was would get newspapers to run articles that Trump was somehow a Russian agent. And since the even biased news outlet didn't see proof of that, the Clinton team decided to do was to run on to work toward what the new media would run, which is the FBI is investigating that Trump runs a Russian agent. So they fed information which they had created into the FBI and swear CIA and others, so that then they would leak that information, and then the newspapers would respond, FBI is investigating, and the FBI, which I knew it was false, continued to investigate 2.5 years, and saw Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and all the rest. I mean, they did it to stop this election. That failed, and then they hamstring his presidency, and they did that throughout his presidency. And so you're absolutely right. He had enemies.
Well, he had enemies, and to me, what's being uncovered by the investigation is a bigger scandal than Watergate.
Oh, it's a scandal.
I mean, honestly, it really is. And the fact that the Democrats won't to it and recognize it is really shameful at this point. I mean, they did destroy the DOJ. They really did.
That the DOJ is being sluggish on this. If we didn't have Durham there, and boy, we don't know if John Durham is going to go after the big fish, right?
Right.
Big fish behind fish. You can't spend billions of dollars doing this and not have the very top people in the campaign, including the candidate herself, somehow knowledgeable and probably approving these multi-million-dollar explorations.
So I think the average person who is going to listen to our interview here and has been paying attention somewhat. I mean, I think that they're just frustrated because we feel like we are being ruled by people that are competent and correct, and no accountability for either the incompetence or corruptness. And you could talk about that in terms of energy policy, education policy. DOJ wanted to come against parents speaking out. I mean, name it. There is incompetency that any American can pick up on, and nobody is being accountable for incompetency.
That's right. And people can see it. Very visible. That's those stickers on your gas pumps saying, "I did that," right? And they did half of that deliberately, right? They wanted energy prices higher, so to encourage investment in energy sources, but it went far beyond what wanted. And the striking thing about the Biden administration is how they never change policies. They see the stakes. I mean, look at what's happening on the southern border.
Oh, yeah, we talk about that.
Right, but they, actually, it's a big topic. You can't get into it at the end of the program. But the fact is, they haven't changed policy. They're making it worse. They're rid of Title IV, Title II, which allowed them to send some people back. Have nothing to put into place instead of that. It's just come on in, bring fentanyl, and somehow this is not going to affect us. When you see Democrats from New Hampshire, like Maggie Hassan, down the southern border, this is having a national impact. And what makes me once again is they just won't change policies. They'll have to after November because they won't have Congress. But assuming there's nothing changes, they'll lose Congress. They have to change things. But look, he could decide, I'm going to rule like Lama said, with my phone and my pen.
Well, and I think we're going to see change in 2024 as well. So, hey, Charles, and thank you so much for joining me on this again. And you can read Charles' columns for Clear Politics, Spectator, Newsweek, The Wall Street Journal, and others. They're available at his website, charleslipson.com. I really appreciate you coming in. He's a local expert talking about national and international issues. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Okay, and coming up in the next segment of my podcast, I will be giving a personal tribute to Doctor Michael Hussey. He's delivered over 10,000 babies. He just died this week. I consider him a personal friend, and I want to read the story, the pro-life story that he led me through with my own child. So that'll be coming up in the next segment. Thank you so much. Welcome back to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. In this segment, I'm going to give a personal tribute to Dr. Michael Hussey, who died just a couple days ago at the age of 89. Dr. Hussey is from Winfield. He's the husband of Patricia, and he had 7 children and multiple grandchildren. And he's a graduate of he was a proud graduate of St. Thomas Aquinas Grammar School, St. Ignatius College Prep, University of Notre Dame, Loyola Stritch School of Medicine, and in his OBGYN residency at Cook County Hospital. He was very proud of that. Dedicated to service, Dr. Hussey was a captain in the U.S. Public Health Service and was one of the doctors who treated the student victims of the Our Lady of Angels school fire in 1958. Active for 30 years as a missionary, he held many religious pilgrimages and provided medical care to the underserved throughout the world. Throughout his 60-plus year career and as a founding physician of Central DuPage Hospital, he touched the lives of many. Most notably, there are over 10,000 children who came into life under his care. Well, our child is one of them. And Dr. Hussey could not have been the more perfect doctor for me at that time in my life. And so I felt compelled to write about my son Mark's life and death. And I wrote about it in Chicago Tribune. And through this entire difficult pregnancy, which eventually ended up in my son dying just shortly after birth, Dr. Hussey was there the whole time. And I will never forget his kindness to me after being informed that more than likely our child will die as soon as he's born. And at that point, the specialty doctors were just asking me to abort, saying that I should abort. And Dr. Hussey pulled me aside, pulled me into his office and says, "We're going to see this through to his natural death." And so I just want to reread the commentary that I wrote. I wrote this to the Chicago Tribune September 29th, 2015. I felt compelled to write it. They titled it, "Why We Let Our Baby's Death Come Naturally." Here's what I wrote. Last week, the Chicago Tribune published an opinion piece by Rebecca Cohen, whose third child was diagnosed with a condition at a 20-week ultrasound that would result in death within hours of birth. In an eloquent essay, Cohen argued that aborting the baby was the best option, which is why she opposes a ban on abortion after 20 weeks of gestation. I disagree. My husband and I faced a similar situation with our 5th son, Mark Anthony Ives. At the 20-week ultrasound, we found that our son had a diaphragmatic hernia. Essentially, the diaphragm splits the abdomen in half, with vital organs like the liver, kidneys, and stomach below, and the heart and lungs above. If the diaphragm is incomplete, the organs below invade the space where lungs should develop. Few, if any, babies survive this deformity, especially if caused by a genetic abnormality. First, we asked if there were a surgical remedy to correct the deformity. Surgeons on both coasts had done some experimental in utero surgeries, but with little success, and no surgeon would take patients whose abnormality resulted from a genetic cause. Unfortunately, we soon learned that Mark's abnormality was genetically based and therefore a certain death sentence at birth. At that point, our high-risk pregnancy doctor strongly suggested we abort the baby. In our conversation, the doctor spoke as if that were the obvious, most reasonable option. The thought of aborting Mark entered my mind for a few brief moments. How convenient. No one needs to think about this anymore. No increased medical expenses, no carrying the baby for 20 more weeks, no painful choice on how to respond to cheerful comments about my impending birth. The problem would just go away, and I could get back to caring for our other 4 boys. But those moments passed quickly. I knew the decision to end Mark's life was neither mine nor my husband's to make. And thankfully, my pro-life doctor knew this too. Dr. Michael Hussey took me aside and said, "We are going to see this baby through to his natural end." The next 4 months, I cried every day with a kind of grief I had never experienced. Our baby boy was alive inside me, kicking and rolling, and on the day we would welcome Mark to the world, he would die in my arms. I was not only grief-stricken, I was also scared. I was terrified to face the death of my own child. But I never blamed God. I never asked why Mark or why me. I understood more acutely than ever before the inescapable truth that suffering is part of this life, and it does not discriminate. What matters most in those dark and often lonely moments of fear and grief is how we respond to what sometimes feels like an unendurable burden. 3 weeks before I delivered my son's second-grade teacher, a wise and compassionate nun who knew we were walking through the valley of the shadow of death, asked when I would have the baby. When I told her, she replied, "Good, then the healing can begin." She was right. Mark was born on April 28, 2002. He died 45 minutes after birth. After his birth, immediately, my doctor baptized him, and nurses lovingly took baby pictures, dressed him, gave him a teddy bear, took footprints, and treated him with the dignity he deserved as a human being created in the image and likeness of God. He was just over 3 pounds and had a nose like my father's. The healing did begin for our family, but I don't believe it would have been complete had we chosen to end his life prematurely. Our decision is not unique. Every day, mothers and fathers receive equally tragic diagnoses and make the same decision. A just, merciful, and compassionate society does not kill those who are imperfect or those whose medical condition is inimical to life. Not even the laudable goal of ending suffering grants to one person the right to kill another. A just, merciful, and compassionate society cares for those who suffer, including preborn babies with serious and even fatal conditions and family members who lose their beloved babies on the day that they first meet. And caring for very sick babies like our son Mark does not entail killing them. This is what Dr. Michael Hussey understood. And he cared for me compassionately and for our family compassionately. And he was there to baptize Mark prior to him taking his heart stopping to beat. And so, Dr. Michael Hussey, I thank you so much for what you did for us at that time in need. And I thank you for setting an example and being a pro-life doctor like none other. And so hats off to Dr. Michael Hussey, and our condolences to his family.